Today we're going to be joined by Mr. Brian Manzella, PGA professional out of English Turn, Brian, New Orleans.
English Turn in New Orleans on the West Bank.
It's funny because one of my childhood idols was Tommy Agee. He was a center fielder with the Mets. Died. We used to play golf all the time, and before he passed, he was supposed to take me down to English Turn, and we were supposed to have a big match. Back then, there was a PGA event played there, if I remember correctly, and it never got.
Yeah, we had the tour event from 1988 to about 2004, and then it moved to the TPC in 2005. But then Katrina came, so it went back because English Turn really didn't get hit very hard at all, just some wind damage, and they played the tournament again in 2006 at English Turn. And they've been back at the TPC ever since. And eventually they'll go to City Park where they're going to build a new golf course, where I started, right down the street from here. So
City Park's the Muni, the famous or infamous Muni, right?
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was 81 holes, and now it's down to 18. So hopefully this other course will get built, and that'll give them 36, and it'll be good for golf. You're a Muni golf guy. It's where the real people play, The
reality is, if you're going to learn how to play, in my opinion, if you're going to learn how to play golf under the extreme circumstances, you get yourself into a money game in a Muni, and you'll learn the hard way. I got hustled by some of the best, and I just kept coming back with more pain, and I just chalked it up to tuition,
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about what you've been up to lately, Brian. A lot of new developments on your end. Let's start with some of your. I've recently seen this your deep plane video, which is probably the foremost video out there, the one that most clearly explains.
Well, I didn't try to do a comprehensive video because really I think that would be something that you'd almost have to get a really good 3D artist, to draw things. Really, I think maybe one day I'll talk to TrackMan people or Michael Jacobs will talk to Flight School people into doing something like that, and I think it'll wind up getting done. But it's sort of an esoteric thing when you're talking about it. I have to do a seminar for some pros coming up here in the next few days, and I'm pretty much going to have to start with that. And it's a weird thing, I've done it a couple of different ways. The best thing I've come up with yet is at the first GTE, I got 2 gallery ropes, like 30 yards long. And we stuck them both in the ground, at the same place, but that's where the path of the club and the face would intersect, because they're going to intersect someplace. And brought them out in the field. The tee line kind of went down, so I brought them out in the field about 30 yards. And one was on a high pole that would have been the true face, and what Jorgensen calls the club face normal, like the little lie angle tool coming out of the face, and then the path, which would have been just a little bit down for this like 3-iron shot that I was proposing that we hit. And I was running with the golf ball. I said, okay, I travel up this, literally jogging down the field. So it's a concept that requires a certain amount of visualization by the person until they get it right in their head. It's a spatial thing, and so the video that I did on YouTube, I had a free hour at English Turn one day in the summertime, and I said, they had some threads on the forum that were just kind of, finally had to you just couldn't take it anymore. You just had to show somebody, here it is, let me draw some lines. And the best thing I think I did was the overhead pictures where you could actually see, hey, this is when these 2 lines are going to get both, on top of each other, which is the only way you're going to hit a straight ball, or at least parallel to the line. And it's a concept that, it's, I even see it in some places called a theory. It's not a theory. It's just a a real smart guy figured out a way to explain ball flight. And I'm sure it's the ball flight of baseballs and just they just have to calculate, the round part of the bat, what part's hitting the ball, and it's just a collision model. And it's probably very simple physics for a physicist like an Aaron Zick or Paul Wood. But for me, I had to get it right in my head, and I've been lucky enough to be able to share it with some people. But I think, what Michael Jacobs said the other day, the single most important discovery in the 600 years of golf instruction is the resultant path, the beginning of the D plane, or what I call the U plane, knowing that you can't just have a plane that's perfectly lined up at the target and swing down it and have the face perfectly square when the ball gets all the information, which turns out it's not separation, but somewhere in the middle of impact and separation. And the ball won't go straight if you do that, you're going to have to finagle the whole direction of the swing, or the direction of the plane, or the plane line, or the horizontal swing plane, or whatever you want to call a thing, is going to have to be a little left on shots off the ground and maybe a little right if you're hitting up on a driver. It is so revolutionary and explains so many different things that, has happened in golfdom, and why people, certain methods work for certain people, but then they don't work for other people. Well, the deep plane sort of explains all of that. And the only real problem with it is, the golf instruction then is a little slow to turn new information over. And, but I think in the next few months, it's going to really come to the forefront, and you might even see, Michael Breed or something, saying something about it on the old Golf Fix.
Well, we've been, unfortunately, some of our early guys didn't make it to the finals of the Golf Channel's top instructor. But we've gotten behind Mr. Martin Hall 100% on that Gotham Golf Blog. We feel that
he's a real good friend, and he's a great guy, and he would do a really good job with the show. It's sort of funny. I've read some of the other teachers who did like myself, that turned in a video, an entry into the contest, and you kind of got their feelings hurt and thought it wasn't very much of a fair contest, but they gave you a shot, and if you were good enough, and just like I said on my website, I wasn't good enough. Now, I think what I was really trying to say there is, I know they wasn't looking for me. They wasn't looking for a 50-year-old, 200-pound Italian guy. You know what I mean? That talks with his hands and has an accent that nobody knows is New Orleans, because the movies misportray us down here in the Bayou country, so to speak, and has all these ideas and opinions, and it's just not what they were looking for. But I will say this: if I would have been better looking than George Clooney and smarter than Aaron Zick and talked better than Jim Nantz, I'd have got a run. So the people who didn't get picked for the same reason I didn't get picked. They wasn't good enough. And the other thing is that if you're a one-trick pony, if you're a method teacher, there's no chance you're ever going to get a show on the Golf Channel. Maybe there'll be some network one day, and but you're going to at least have to be the kind of person who can explain all the methods, even if you don't believe in all of them. And the people that, just, know their material real well and did videos and wonder why they wasn't picked. I mean, they have to realize, the golf market is a very small market. The Golf Channel has a very, very small share. I mean, if you go online and you do a search or like Nielsen ratings or something, very small share. So you get this, that's not even all the golfers, Hey, I don't watch a Golf Channel. I'm a golf. I really don't. I rarely ever watch it. Nothing against any of the guys on it or anything like that. I just, that's not something that's on here at the Manzella house. We were watching the Hornets game tonight, and they were winning. And so I did this with you, right down the stretch. I hope it didn't blow it at the end. But so you got this very small market. So you imagine that this, let's say 9% of the people in the United States are golfers, and then maybe less than half of the people play golf or watching the Golf Channel on any given week. I mean, you just start whittling it away. And if you're a one plane teacher, not to pick on those guys, but I just didn't want to mention any other names because I didn't want any bullets coming through the windows. Basically, they there's just no way you could just talk about one method. Now, you could be a guy who believes in that, but you were going to have to be pretty well versed in everything and be very fair across the board. And it's something that there are very few guys that and girls that turned it in that be able to pull that off. But Martin is one of them. So I wish him the best of luck.
Sure. And I agree with you in that standpoint that beyond teaching knowledge, there also has to be like a television persona. And if you look at the finalists, you look at Karen Palacio, she's been on the Golf Channel since she started. And Martin Hall has been on the Golf Channel since the Golf Channel has started. So they know it's not, it's a known entity what they're going with. I don't know if this guy Wayne Player beyond but yeah.
Well, he's got a pretty good end. And you know what? I watched pretty much all of them. And I thought he did a real good job, a real well-rounded, performance. I mean, I don't know what his, his teaching knowledge is, but the guy was a really good player at some point. He played in a couple majors, and if nothing else. I mean, hey, the Harmons have gone a long way telling stories about the guys they used to hang around with their dad. I'm pretty sure Wayne Player's got some of those stories too. Sure. So don't count him short on this thing. Everybody sort of, on the forums and the blogs have sort of written him off, but I was fairly impressed with him, and I think he would do a good job. I think one of the things that you just have to understand about, unless you've done a lot of video work, and I've been lucky. I hooked up with this tourist network a few years ago, and they have stations in Panama City and Destin and a few places and Atlanta and through that I've been able to I've been able to do more on-camera stuff that's just not me turning my camera on and shooting a video with a guy, taking pictures or something like that. But, real, okay, here's a shot. We got 3 minutes. We got to do this commercial. You got to get it done. And there's a certain amount of skill level that I certainly didn't have when I first started. I got a lot better at it. And the people like Karen and Martin and probably Wayne, we don't know what he's doing wherever he's been. Might have done a lot of TV. It's a skill set that's a little bit different than just impressing a few people on your website. I can tell you that for sure.
Right. Well, how did 2009 treat you? I mean,
it was a really good year. In a down economy, I was up, and most of my guys, pretty much all of them, the full-time teachers in the group, they were all up, and I think the reason is because we've got a pretty darn good product. We've got something that's different. I mean, I've got a bunch of golf books on that bookcase over there, but I got a bunch of business books at the bottom too. And if you don't have a unique selling proposition, you've got a problem. You have a business, and we do. I mean, the people that are selling the method, man. One problem with that is if you're a pure method teacher and there's 20 of you and you're all wearing white belts, no offense, what's to pick one from the other? And what we're trying to sell is the idea that if you go, Ralph, to the course where you grew up, or Rock Hill, where Michael Jacobs is, it's just a normal, higher end public course, or City Park where I grew up, where they're still teeing them off all day long on the North course. And you sit there with 10 teachers that you know of. I mean, you talk to teachers all the time in your interviews on your website. And you sat there with a little score sheet, and every cat that teed off, you wrote down either nothing, right? The golfer number 14, I don't know, he didn't look like anything to me. But then, like, every time you see somebody that you think is doing a method, I bet you that guy has the stack and tilt DVD or something. You wrote down, stack and tilt golfer number 24. At the end of the day, when they've teed off 180 people on a busy day, you might have about 7 or 8 people out of 180 that were doing any definable method just watching the first tee of the public course. And I've told that to quite a few teachers and fairly knowledgeable people, and they've sort of agreed with that, less than 10%. So who teaches those other people? Well, we want to. we'll teach somebody that wants a method. We try to stay on top of most of the methods, but basically the other 95% of people out there who just have their swing and want to know how they can get a little bit better, which is really hard to do after you've been playing for a while. I remember the guys that my dad played with on the weekend, they had 2 different clubs, and he used to get his handicaps in the mail on Tuesday, and I would open them up, see if his handicap was going down. And man, from the time I was 10 years old to the time I turned pro when I was 21, those guys' handicaps, those 30 or 40 guys he played golf with, man, those guys' handicaps, those 11 years stayed pretty darn much the same. So it's a, for a regular guy that plays a little golf, a couple times on a weekend or maybe once during the week, if he's got some time off, to get that guy 2, 3, 4, 5 shots better is no joke. And it can be done without saying, okay, you're going to have to buy into this whole program and learn every body position, hand position, and paint every line on video. You don't have to do it. 95% of people aren't doing it. They're doing it maybe on their own. And we feel like we have something that'll let those people get better. And I don't care if it's a high-level player like a Derek Sanders or a David Toms or a Lindsey Game, or the 30 handicapper that I might have to teach this weekend. All those people can get a little bit better. And so I think our message of basically taking what you have and trying to work with it a little bit and just upgrade it with a little, know-how and some good measurement tools. For instance, Damon Lucas, our guy in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, right outside of D.C., he's had we just built a brand new big building and the tailor-made mat system, which is a very expensive, high-end 3D system that's going to be there. So he's going to have flight scope in the mat system, and we have golf schools there. We're going to have the mat system and flight scope and TrackMan, Casio high-speed video, and just like my friend James Light said, why guess when you can measure? So we try to measure, see what somebody's doing, and do a little bit better job of getting those numbers into something that works for that player, and with the minimum of hopefully changes. To me, the best lesson in the world, if I ever got to give you a lesson, Ralph, would be I watched you hit some balls and I went, I'd like to see you corkscrew your right arm through the ball a little bit. Maybe you kind of do this a little bit and you look like you're trying to hit a draw. Maybe and then all of a sudden you just started hitting it better, just right away. That's it. Pat you on the back and walk off. I mean, that's a perfect golf lesson. A perfect golf lesson is not, well, Ralph, at this point you're a little low, and at that point you're a little high, and here your wrist is a little too much like this, and that just you can do that with some people, but some people just need just a little push in the right direction. And I think the reason that we're all doing so well is that we can do that too. Besides the long-term development that obviously the better player needs.
That reminds me of my friend Juan Campos, who's a low handicapper. Myself happened also in the 90s. I went to see Hebron to tune up and hit a few balls. He said, you hit it good, and refunded my money, told me to go home. I said, okay, good enough. That's all I needed to hear.
Sometimes that's sometimes that's I've had that happen maybe less than 5 times, where I just thought, hey man, let's go watch you putt,
Right.
Especially if the person had something coming up and I thought it looked pretty good and there wasn't any crazy ball flight issues, you'll work on somebody's short game and maybe you save them a shot or two.
While we were on the subject of method teaching and how much of this, I mean, I'm watching all these different, I guess we can call them methods, and none of it is really new. In fact, I wind up in this stacked position myself, which probably works fine, but I got no access to it. My head keeps going forward. It probably cost me a Long Island amateur many years ago and made me give up golf. I started shanking the ball. But naturally, I wound up on my left side. And the only problem was I was leading with my head. I looked, I've been going through my video. I have a pretty extensive video. I've been fortunate enough throughout the years to hustle and trade and underground and run into people. I have a pretty extensive video library. So I was going through an instruction video filmed in the late 30s by Tommy Armour. Not Tommy Armour III, but the Silver Scott himself.
Sure, absolutely.
And it seemed to me like he was teaching stack and tilt, or what we know as today is stack and tilt. In fact, I'm going to air some of it on my blog. Like, just seemed like it was stack.
Interestingly, Mr. Armour probably taught something fairly similar to that with an iron, and then something altogether different with the woods. He really felt like a lot of teachers feel, maybe not the stack and tilters, but I don't want to speak for them, but that driver swing is distinctly different than the rest of the game, especially the iron swing. And he didn't even want to, Armour didn't even want to give you a lesson on both in the same day. So that says a lot.
Well, this is no knock on the stack and tilt people, because they've never claimed to invent anything. They clearly state in their book that they cataloged and categorized these certain, I guess they were mutual or overlapping things that happen in good golf swings. To their credit, they're not claiming they invented anything. But I just had that conversation this evening with Mr. Nori Wright down in Florida, and he says he's looking at my picture on my avatar. He says, "Man, you're stacked." I said, "You could probably hit your irons." I said, I can hit anything up to a 5-iron. And then after that, it's toast. I'm like, I'm like Brad Faxon was. I'm short and wild. When I hit my 5-iron 200 yards, I hit my driver 190. So you can try to figure that out.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in golf. There's definitely a lot of that in golf.
And not to say that there's anything, I'm sure there's other.
Well, on that subject of old golf swings, and basing your method off of old golf swings, I think there's a lot to be learned. I was looking at the Tommy Boat swing that you have in your site, and I thought it was really just awesome. But at the anti-summit that we had in Scottsdale, Arizona on October 11th, that was one of the questions that came up. How different? It wasn't one of my questions. It was actually Adam Schreiber, who works with Morgan Pressel and Brian Kim and Anthony Kim. Brian Kim's a really good player that we used to teach in Louisville, and he asked the question to Paul Wood: how different, would the swings have to be to play with the old equipment? And he said drastically. So I don't know if you want to completely base what you're doing. I'm not saying those guys are, I'm just saying, but there's a lot of people out there doing research and all that. I think you want to learn from the great players, but it's a different game now. I remember when I first started playing, I played the section championship. It was my first one in 8 years. And I remember the first one I played in, one of the first ones I played in right over here at Lakewood, which is close to English Turn. They have a new course there now, but the old course they used to play the tour band, it was a really nice course. And I remember, I don't know how I finished, but, probably, top 20 or something like that. But there was a guy named Teddy Slyman, who's a golf pro out of the Lafayette area, and I think he won. And I mean, that cat couldn't fly at 210 yards, and he played in a few tournaments. I mean, you could play golf like that. I mean, none of those guys are going to force spot for a golf tournament now. I don't care how you putt. I mean, even a so-called short hitter on tour is a lot longer golfer than people think they are. And modern golf, you got to, if you got somebody coming up now, like, that's a kid if he doesn't hit the ball, if he's not capable of hitting it 300 in the air when he hits it good, I mean, you better be able to chip and putt better than anybody ever. I mean, it's a different game, and these courses are forever long, and the swings that you're going to have to use with a 45-inch driver and a and now they're going to these 44-gram shafts, and it's just a different sport. And I think you can read too much into basing everything on the old timers. Sure.
Sure. Yeah, and I just had that. I just actually was speaking to John Erickson, who teaches that type of protocol, the 14-inch persimmon driver, 14-ounce, 15-ounce persimmon drivers and stuff like that. And, he's right. He's actually resentful of the fact that golf has taken that course. But, just like everything else, change is what it is, and you have to adapt to it.
Yeah, you got to play the course as you find it. This is the game we have, Yeah,
the ball is lies in the course as you find it, right?
That's right.
Two basic rules in golf. Now, on that same note, we've been talking about a little bit. We want to talk a little bit about the different protocols that have been touched on over the years.
Sure.
I'm going to be talking with Dr. Sasso McKenzie eventually. I just haven't had enough time to digest his literature because if you look over there, all I have is technical manuals, and I really don't want to see a calc. I don't want to see that stuff. But he's got some really good stuff.
We had a conference call with him and all the guys about 2 weeks ago. Really knowledgeable, smart guy. There's about, and this is sort of what we're doing right now, research wise, is there's about 24. Just to give you a round number, 24 of these guys like McKenzie out there, and he's definitely one. He's in that group, and that they're doing real hard research, real hard science research. And you got to realize now when you're dealing with models, you got to understand what the model limitations and you got to have some real world knowledge too. But there's a lot to be learned from a lot of these guys. I wouldn't say everything that every one of them has is total gospel when it applies to real golf, but the stuff that's right is right. And that's sort of part of our, Project 1.68 is, we're at a stage in time now where some of the scientists that we've found and have found us, once they found out we were doing this thing, we got all kind of phone calls, and nobody's really interested in the data, and they're doing this work, and the golf teachers are just like running from it. And so we're hunters and gatherers. We're gathering all this information, and we're getting pretty long way down the road. We're gonna have a whole day session with one of the scientists. I'd rather not mention his name. In December, and we have a guy on the West Coast that's one of the smartest guys in the world. That's he's not really a biomechanist. He's sort of like an engineer physicist of biomechanics. Where a Dr. Zick is more of an engineer physicist on what the clubs do. This guy's more of an engineer physicist of what the body's doing. Where Rob Neal, who's one of the talk speakers that we had at the symposium, is he's in there doing the work. He does research too. Now, don't get me wrong, but he's in there, doing real biomechanics on real people, like I'm doing in my teaching, with people. So these people, these scientists, this information is there. And if you're not asking too much of it, if you don't want to have every answer in the universe of golf answered and asked and answered, and you just want a reasonable amount, let's say, what could you write on this checkbook right here, I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're for instance, I'll give you this much, and because we've said it on our sites, the ball in the club, when they make contact with each other, that club face, much as a lot of people are really sad that this is the case, and they want to take shots at me, and I don't care what the scientists say, I'll just figure out how to teach it. It's barely rotating at all. A lot of times it's not even rotating. And on a perfectly centered hit and a really active club face, it may be from impact to separation of about a half of a degree. And it turns out that the information that the ball receives from the club happens somewhere between the impact and the separation. So you can say, for all practical purposes, a quarter of a degree between when the ball gets the information and when the club hits the ball. And if you teach with a unit like TrackMan or Flight Scope, it's measured in tenths of a degree, not in, quarters of a degree. You're basically the same thing. Two tenths of a degree, all things else being the same, that is not enough of a difference that, first of all, a human being, there's never going to be a human being that's going to be able to go, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 with the club face. It's never, ever going to happen. I mean, I'm telling you, the best in the world, maybe, 3/10 on either side of the same number, or maybe 4 or 5/10 on one side of the number. They have they're either hitting, let's say, a guy with a little hold shot. He may put up let's say a 0 club face just to have an easy number, and then he never puts up a negative number, and about as bad as about as far to the right as the face will ever get is maybe 6/10 of a degree. There's just not going to be anybody that's ever going to come along that's going to have. So, well, what you can learn by that? Whatever club face you want, you better bring that sucker to the ball. And there's an awful lot of people out there that were trying to hit straight shots hitting the inside of the ball, and you can't do it. You can't. So, that solves a lot of problems, and you can't influence it, when it's there. I mean, they got people that are taking a hard line approach, that, yes, you can hit that ball and you can do something different to it with the same impact alignments, and you just can't. And so, that kind of stuff, how many pages did that take? I mean, that's, in a manual sized golf book with a couple of good pictures and written out decently so that the average 5th grade Catholic school girl can, read that chapter and go do a book report on it. I mean, you're talking about, just a couple of pages on that part of impact, maybe. And so the information's there. You got to know who to ask. So, interestingly, we talked to a guy at one of the big companies, and not Paul Wood, who we regularly talk to, who was at our symposium at the Anti-Summit, but from another major company. We'll just leave it at that. The Paul Wood of this company, one of the top 3. And they have 3D cameras. They have all kind of stuff. They don't even measure it. We're asking this guy, like, how much is the face rotating while it's on the ball? He's going, I don't think. So what are you talking about? Like 6 inches before the ball and 6 inches after the ball? No. We're talking about while it's on the ball. We don't even measure that. So think about that now. They've got 3D cameras. They're measuring like they've got golf balls now. I mean, I'm sure you've seen them, Ralph, where I've got a million balls laying around here, but like one dimple, like 4 dimples on the ball, or like a different dimple altogether. It's like a real deep hole, like somebody like put a pop mark in it deeper than a dimple. They're doing that to golf balls, and the same company isn't even measuring what the club face does from impact to the middle of the impact interval. So, those are the kind of things that the information's there, and we're kind of gathering it up, and we want to try to present it in a way that a golfer like yourself, you teach for a living, but you're super into it all, could read this little manual on a flight from New York City to Miami, maybe, and just kind of, looking through the pictures and reading where you didn't understand the captions or the bigger, and just a simplified version of what actually goes on in the golf swing. Not trying to catalog every possible combination. We're working on a classification system, but it's going to be not very many things. I mean, it's what the hands do, and what the shoulder does, and the various bends and twists and torques and stuff like that. But we're just trying to get it into a form that isn't trying to do too much or trying to cover too much ground, so we can get it right and then just put that over there on the shelf. And every time we learn one little thing in that manual is just slightly off, and then we'll just correct it that day. I mean, the way I see it is, I mean, we may print up a couple of them just because I don't know, when people write books, they do that. But to me, it's an electronic document that you buy, like, for, I don't know, some $20 or something like that. And that's a year license. So maybe like 10 times in a year from that first publication, we might change a word or two here, and then you'll get a little email and your little Ralph Perez email address at the Gotham City Golf blog, and it'll say, oh, there's a change in Project 168 on page 32, but there's your new PDF. You can throw your old one away, and there it is. And I think that people like Homer Kelly, when he was writing The Golf Machine, if he would have had access to that kind of technology, Homer took a lot of good things that he thought were good and other people thought were good in the book out, because a page cost a lot of money. He was self-publishing the thing, and he said, well, we don't have room for that anymore, So, I mean, I see this thing kind of, small, that'll kind of grow over time, but we just want to, it's a hurdle we want to cross, and maybe we'll help a few people out and save them some time, because we're certainly, I found out something in our research last night. I'm not going to give it away here, but about what the shoulder does. And let me tell you, Ralph, I was so far off of what when I saw this, I stood there and I went, well, that's obviously right. And, one of our scientists pointed it out to us, and I went, how could people miss that? I'm not saying everybody missed it now. Now that I know what this is, I'm going to investigate if anybody else has ever said it. And if they have, son of a gun, I don't care who they are, man, I'm giving them full credit, because it's a very simple thing that was just obscured because people had different ideas of what the right shoulder or the shoulders or whatever do in the downswing, or and it was just one of those things where it was like, how did they miss this? How did everybody miss this? And I was pouring over the books last night, going, well, maybe this book, but none of them had it in there. And it's just it's an obvious thing when you see it. And that's kind of, where we're going with that kind of stuff. And it's fun because, shoot, you can bet that knowledge, that's hard knowledge that the next time, I'm making the decision in somebody's golf swing on, let's say, plane of what the club's doing. All of a sudden, that what we've now learned about the right shoulder is very different than. I don't see anybody talking about this one. I mean, maybe somebody, there's a lot of that going on, Ralph. I mean, there's a lot of people who have some good stuff, and they're not really that forthcoming with it when you know what I mean, like on the internet. It's like, you have to come to one of our schools. I mean, I understand you got to get paid for your information, but at some point, like, okay, hey, the last, we're going on 8 years here on my website. Been an open book, I mean, people, I heard somebody on one of the other forums sort of like saying, yeah, but he's changed everything he's taught. I haven't changed everything I teach. I've changed a lot of what I think. I was always teaching around the stuff that I had wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, I was going to make the ball go straight, or the draw or fade that the golfer was looking for, and I could get it done. And I always could get it done. And I just, it's a lot easier to do it without a monkey on your back, So, every day, we're like Steve Young. We're throwing monkeys off our back with new information, and it offends people. Everybody, it's business, man. I mean, you look at these WikiLeaks. You look at what the world leaders think of each other. Do you think golf pros are going to be any better? So
I agree with you. And on the same token, like I'm giving away what's freely given to me on my blog, and it bothers me sometimes that people have the audacity to complain. And I'm saying to myself, well, how much are you paying for this? You know what I mean? I go out here, I take a lesson with a guy, I pay him the lesson fee, I air it. You know what I mean? Okay, well, Well, the audio is not good. Okay, so why don't you go pay him the $500, take the lesson, and then you can complain. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and you put it out there freely, and nobody's ever happy enough. I'm like, oh, what do you want?
No,
No section tab there. Nobody taps it, but it's not like I'm looking for it. But it's you know,
at the end of the day, though, Ralph, you have a good site, and we have visitors. I mean, the website's all about how many people come to the website every day.
sure.
Or every month, and we're way up. In September we're around 4.5 million hits a month, which is we were averaging 2.5 million in the middle of last year, or three, maybe just under three during the golf season. So a little bit off of golf season, football season to be up around 5 is huge, and almost every day I get a phone call from a golf pro. And just talked to one today from Canada that wants me to come up there and speak. So if everybody's agreeing with everybody, ain't nobody learning anything. Let's put it to you that way. And I'm not a disagreeable guy. I play football on the weekends with a bunch of African American young men. Most of them could be my son. So not only am I getting along with a little different culture, I'm getting along with guys that are half my age. And, I used to play golf with David too, so have those two things in a resume, can't be too bad a guy, so,
Right.
but when somebody, the thing that kind of annoys me and my guys, when somebody says something that's wrong, and we find out it's wrong, and we're wrong all the time, and we're big enough to always say that we're wrong, and somehow there's a few people out there floating around in golfdom, man, they ain't been wrong once, got once, and it's offensive, and it doesn't offend me. I've sort of graduated in the last about 6 weeks, there's some people that just, they're never going to get it, and they don't want to get it. And it's a personality thing, and bless them, let them go do what they're going to do, because there's a lot of people out there that are interested in our information, and we're going to spend more time giving the people that want the information than worry about trying to convert any of these guys over here that I think, basically unconvertible. They've been having that problem in the Middle East now for how many 1,000 years now. They keep thinking it's going to be peace, but nah.
It's never. Oh, I mean, it is what it is, and I don't particularly take on to, any camp or anything. I stay away from that kind of stuff. But what I'm finding now is that we talk about people holding on, withholding information, and say, well, you need to come to one of our schools, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's the opposite's also the case, particularly with the internet, and it's a great thing. I was on the internet before Al Gore invented it. When
That's right.
It's black and white. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we used to go over to our Jewish friend Fred Schulman, wedding dress broker and salesman, and he had this. He had all the computers before we did, and he would get on this thing. It was the internet, and it was like black and white DOS,
That's all it was. It DOS, a Unix-based. It was Rex Sports Golf, and it was like an email thing, an email server. But it's a great thing. Probably the best thing.
It's the best thing. I mean,
best utility ever invented.
Best thing that's ever happened in my career, because what it does for people like me, and I'm sure there's a poor sucker, something like me in every profession, and professional organizations are pretty much the same for doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs as they are for golf pros. And it's hard to, if you're a square peg, and they got a bunch of round holes, it's kind of hard to get through all of that. And the internet has been great for me, because it's a level playing field. A lot of people don't like that it's a level playing field, but it's a level playing field. My website, your website, David Ledbetter's website. He can buy and sell both of us into slavery. Really? You can make yours look just as pretty as his. So the only reason that somebody's going to come to Ralph's website as opposed to David's website on a given day is you got better content. And that's what it's all about. And I've been accused of all kind of things with content. I've been accused of just like, well, I'm just the flavor of the month guy. I mean, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. When I first started teaching my website, when I first started having my website, 2003, I gave a slicer a golf lesson, 85%, exactly like I do now. And you know how many people out there are slicers? I don't teach all those people anymore now. Now I'm a destination teacher, and you get a lot better players. But I'm telling you now, if I just went someplace and spent 2 weeks teaching at a public driving range to all comers, 80% of those people are going to get the same damn golf lesson they got all those years ago. So I'm hardly but I will not die with the sword in my hand. Like this shoulder thing, I cannot believe we didn't have that right. Nobody did. It wasn't in any of these books that we always talk about. We're not going to mention any of their names. But it wasn't in any of that stuff. And it wasn't anything I've ever read before. And it was like, are you kidding me? And then we started, pulling videos and checking. It was there all along. We missed it. And so at some point, I'm not going to say what it is right now because we're going to polish it up a little bit and name it something or whatever. But one week, and maybe give some credit to credit where credit's due, where, somebody's already figured half of it out or all of it out. But I'll go teach it tomorrow, and maybe it'll work on people, and maybe it won't. But that's what being good at your craft is. I've been playing drums my whole life. There's my little set over there, and I'm always holding on to chopsticks, man. Like I think I'm about to play a lick, and I guarantee you, I don't get to do it as much as I like to, but when I was doing it, I got a little bit better at it every day. It's just like anything else. I don't care if you're an artist and you're painting or you're a drywall hanger. You're supposed to be learning new techniques and getting better every day. And that's what we, the Manzella Academy guys do. And that's what a lot of scientists, that's why we're getting calls now from scientists, because they know we'll listen, that we're going to listen. Now, we might not agree with everything they say, and we'll check it against other scientists, but we're going to at least listen, and we're going to give credit where credit's due, and that's all we can do. The other people, this is my prediction. Some of the stuff, if you wrote down, if you go to all the websites, and a lot of guys, if you wrote down, and I would trust your opinion on this, if you wrote down the 10 things that you feel like are the most contentious 10 items about the golf swing going right now. Wrote that down on a piece of paper. And you looked at it real hard, kind of have it committed to memory, stuck it in an envelope and put it up in the third drawer of the second cabinet. And make yourself a little note in your phone that 5 years from now, you're going to go back to that. And you're going to be laughing at those 10 things. The world, it's sort of like the theory they used to have with processors and computers, like somebody's law, every went twice as fast and 4 times as high every couple of years, basically. And the things that we're talking about right now, man, the preponderance of evidence that there's 2 big measurement machines right now, TrackMan and Flight School. Man, 5 years from now, who knows? There's going to be video coming down the pike here in the next 2 years. Video-based 3D. You can take a video of Ralph Perez and say his right shoulder is turning on this angle and has this amount of angular momentum, and it has this tilt, and he has this forward bend and side bend, and there's this much wrist uncocking here, and this much. Now you got to stick a bunch of wires on somebody, and it's $40,000, but it might be $3,000 and no wires 2-3 years from now. Man, and then that's going to be integrated with the data, like in a TrackMan or a Flight Scope, which is going to keep getting better every year. And at some point, it's like the D plane. The D plane is just right, and it's just going to swallow up all all the other ball flight methodologies in the next couple of years. And all this other good stuff is going to swallow up everybody too. Science is always going to win. And the other thing that's going to win is those damn 7,600-yard golf courses. You better be teaching something. There's a lot of these methods that if you wrote down the 3 methodologies that have the most trouble with me, I'm not going to mention any names. It won't take a genius to go do some research watching it. Those all, they ain't a long hitter in that group now. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying. I'm not teaching the world. I'm not teaching Jamie Sadlowski either, but his swing doesn't offend me. And so, and this little high school kid that finished second this year, I think that kid makes a totally normal swing. And I guarantee you these methodologies look at that guy's swing and go, that's a terrible play.
The kid looks like McAdden and your soft draw pattern. He steps into his right side, he makes a quick pivot. I don't want to drop names now. We don't want to drop names. Let's move on.
Golf swing. It's like a normal golf swing to me. And here's the funny thing. If you took that kid and you put him in a time machine with one of John Erickson's persimmon drive, right? And you sent him back 25 years ago, there ain't nobody in the world that would say anything about that guy's golf swing. Right. I'm pretty damn sure that 25 years ago, when Jack Nicklaus was the best player on the planet, they could play a little golf back then. So I'm pretty sure we're going through a phase with some of these limited pivot. I don't know what you would call them, methods, limited pivot methods, and these 7,600-yard golf courses. I don't know. You're going to teach it to 6'5". I never forget the first time I saw Nick Faldo live. I think he had been at Lakewood, in his early, because like when he first got on played the American Tour a little bit.
We were down like at Innisbrook, weren't they, or somewhere down there?
Yeah, but I'm just saying the first time I saw him, he was probably at Lakewood, but he wasn't such a big deal. But by the time they started playing the tournament at English Turn, at some point, there was Faldo, and there I was, and, I'm teaching golf, and I'm trying to steal as much good information for everybody as I can, including good players. And I remember 2 things about that day. He was number 1 in the world with a bullet at that point. He practiced this ridiculous downhill lie bunker shot to this no-room elevated green that Nicklaus built on the front side of our driving range, short game area. That is the stupidest practice bunker in America, because there isn't one place at English Turn you can get that shot. Just, I don't know which one of his guys built that. The rest of that short game area is great, but that one shot is just goofy. But there was Faldo for like 90 minutes straight hitting that shot. Now, I knew even then that he was full of pee-pee caca, because all he was doing was basically showing those other guys, I'm willing to practice this ridiculous shot for 90 minutes. So I'm going to beat you. You're not willing to do that. This before VJ decided he was going to hit 800 balls a day. So he went to the range and he warmed up a little bit, and then he went to the first tee, and really like 10 people that followed him. I don't know who was playing that day, but it was basically me and a few little, mommies and daddies. We walked down 1, 2, and 3, and I had just played that golf course, and he didn't hit it as far as I did. And I couldn't believe that. I have never been anything but a medium hitter. And back then I wasn't 200 pounds. So I was this 165, 70 pound, 5 foot, 8.5 little Italian guy, that just hit it, a decent distance. It wasn't a short hitter, it wasn't a long hitter. And nobody even talked about my length, kind of like David Toms, was, 10 years ago. And I was always about 10 yards shorter than David, though. Let's just mark that down somewhere. And even though we were the same size guy. And anyway, I'm thinking to myself, man, Faldo's this much bigger than me. And his shoulders are this much wider than me. And he's built like a linebacker. I mean, at least I'm pretty safety. And, and if I would have been built like that, I wouldn't even been out there, because I'd have been playing in the damn NFL. And I'm watching this guy hit the ball, and I'm going, wow, is he sick? Is he playing with a tour edition like Greg Norman? What the heck is going on? But no, that was just, Ledbetter's method had been put together in a way that controlled the ball very well. I mean, you got to say that Nick Price and Nick Faldo, they were pretty damn good ball strikers. And although I think at that point in time, Couples was heads and shoulders better ball striker than they were, but just, he had his own little issues. But those two guys were big guys, Ralph. And now, everybody shrinks when they get older. But let me tell you now, those two guys, if you were playing tackle football, they would be two of the first guys picked out there in a tour range, because you figure if they couldn't catch, man, you just put them in front of them, they could block for the old Italian stallion, And they went in anywhere. And the exact same thing, the reason I went through this little thing on Faldo is it mentioned Ledbetter, so we're not talking about these current, non-dynamic pivots. These guys eventually, all the best players in the world. And this little kid, this little African-American, half Asian, African-American kid came up, and this little blonde-headed kid from Arkansas came along, and they hit it like 80 yards by both of those two guys and then blew their mind. I think that those two guys should have been better players longer than they were, because Tiger, Dale was going to implode like he always did. Poor guy, because I know John, and he's a super nice guy. But Tiger wasn't going to win every tournament, wasn't going to win every major, but he blew those guys' minds. They were at the top of their game in 1997. Here comes this kid. He's hitting 900 par fives, man. And they were just going, I don't understand it. He's 170 pounds, soaking wet. Maybe 160 when he won the Masters in 1997. And he putts better than me, chips better than me, pitches better than me, and he hits the ball further than me. How can I beat this guy? And they couldn't. And it ruined them. And I really believe, man, that's the problem with these, we don't want to move too far because we might make bad contact with the ball. I've never had a student in my life that had contact problems. I've been doing this 28 years. I'm talking about like a tournament player student of mine. Not a single. The people on tour that can't hit the ball first. What planet does this happen on, Everybody who's on tour hits it far enough, pretty much, and hits it solid enough, pretty much, and maybe just doesn't hit it the same distance all the time, or they hit it a little crooked. I'm pretty sure they're not having trouble making a divot in front of the ball. So that's just my opinion on that stuff. And you got to be forward thinking now. If you want to teach good players for a long period of time, I know all those guys they're pretty popular right now with the teachers, but think that you can see how Sean Foley's trying to go a little more dynamic. A lot of people criticizing he copies. Everybody copies in this business. You kidding me? The number one person on this planet who is my number one rival, competitor, heated enemy, whatever you want to call him. I watched a video of him teaching somebody the other day, and he had stolen something from the soft draw pattern. And you know what? So what? You know what I mean? Like, I'm the first person that ever said, step on your right foot and then swing back, and then step on your left foot and then swing through. Probably not.
I got that from Greg McHadden, and his stuff was over 20 years old. But you credited Greg in your video.
Yeah, and I'm sure Greg heard it someplace else too. So
exactly.
For them, I've talked to Sean a few times, and he's a smart kid. But the one thing I'll say about him, I did not get the impression that he thinks he knows everything. He knows there's a lot more to learn. And I'm just saying, everybody who is in a little box right now better be thinking about expanding that box, because the measurement devices are going to sort of force your hand.
Well, here's the thing. I have a license to practice, a professional license to practice here in the state of New York. When I passed that test, it was a 20-hour test, 3 days, sweating, whatever. Okay, once I was granted that license, that license, what it tells me is that, or what it tells the consumer is, that I am minimally competent to practice this. It's imperative that in any field for me that there be some professional development. In order for me to sustain my license, I have to go and develop professionally. Every 3 years, I have to present 24 credits to the state board. The same, it's the same thing in any profession. If you're a professional instructor, and I'm going to give you in my field, Doppler radar has been obsolete for 35 years. Okay. When Sputnik was going around a little basketball in the 1950s, okay, two ham radio guys got together and they heard this little beep and they said, down in Nassau, it might have been maybe it was in DC or something. They said, we can predict the orbit of this thing. And they came up with the Doppler effect. Later on, it was used in the 70s to measure the shape of the Earth. Now, with the advent of GPS, that's totally, when a GPS first came out, it was the size of my refrigerator, right? Now I have GPS on my BlackBerry.
Sure.
Wherever I want to go. When I wanted to get accurate distances, I had to sit there with a receiver for, I think it was 8 to 10 hours. And then I had to take out all the redundancies and the anomalies. Okay, here's where I am. Now it's just boom, right? So times change. People change. Everything changes. We're in a state of constant change. The fact of the matter is that we have to kind of go with the flow, or otherwise you get, it's not.
You'll get a kick out of this. I actually didn't read this, but somebody copied it and sent it to me. And replaying golf is compensation golf.
I don't know. I know.
But I mean, that just, if people want to argue with me, come on now with replaying.
Oh, it's not, you can't.
The same.
No, because you didn't invent it. Right?
No, I'm not invented. No, I sure did. They was just going to sit there in Jorgensen's little book on everybody's shelf until Frederick Tuxen came along. And now everybody just needs to just get off the pot and figure out what it is and then retrofit it. I don't know how to explain it. Listen, okay, I don't know how to explain it, but I can tell you this. You want to hit the ball straight, you hit the back of the ball with the face square. Next stop, that's it. That's it. You want to hit a draw, you have the inside of the ball. You want to hit a fade that starts left, you better not hit the inside of the ball. It's not going to start left. That's pretty much it. That's all you need to know about where on the ball you hit. And I've heard also, well, if you didn't have hinge action, what would you do to control the club base? You think Tommy Bolt and Chichi Rodriguez and Lee Trevino know anything about hinge action? Your body's in a different position. It's a different feel to hit a fade and a draw. And you can measure that on first of all, you can measure on TrackMan and know, okay, there's the shot that I need to play the 11th hole at Metairie Country Club. I hit a fade with my driver, and I need more fade on that hole. I have my most regular, English turn student who's about a 9 handicapper. And he's also a member of Metairie Country Club. He hits a draw, and he's got to play this fade hole. Well, we get on TrackMan, and we know what his numbers have to be to produce that shot. If I had 3D, when he did one real good, we would know where his body was in space. And I bet you his shoulders are probably more open. He probably has a little more right side bend. He probably has, his hands are probably a little bit more forward. He probably straightened his right wrist a little bit less. And when he hit a draw, his arms probably swing across his chest a little bit more and his tilts are a little different. And then that's it. That's how you control the ball. You control the ball with body, positioning, hand and arm position. That's it. It's not that complicated. I can stand there. I can't, I'm up these days, I played in a tournament Monday and it wasn't, I didn't have to play. I played my ball, but me and Tom Bartlett played as a team and we had these two amateurs and, but I played out every shot, and I shot 77 on the course that's about what I averaged for 3 rounds in the section championship. I don't play golf anymore at any amount of time that those 5 or 6 or 7 shots that I hit 13 fairways, not 77, When I was 25 years old, if I hit 13 fairways, I was going to shoot, quite a number lower than 77. Those kind of things, changing your trajectories and all that stuff. You can measure those things now, and then you can video those things now at high speed, and you can 3D them, and they're going to be a little different for Ralph Perez than they are for Brian Manzella. But I mean, people get their feelings hurt. It happens in any business. I mean, I remember when the most coveted device that I never could buy was the Panasonic AG 1960 VHS, not SVH. It might be an SVHS, but either VHS or SVHS. Yeah. What? Give me that sucker and see how much you could buy. You'd probably buy a brand new one for $100 now. And it was like $2,000, But I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, line drawing people. I mean, I remember when V1 was like they wanted $1,000 for that program. Come on, man. I just did 3 days worth of golf swing research and Keynote, which is a $50 program on my Macintosh. I can write a damn line I want. It tells me to the 100th of a degree what the heck I'm doing when I'm rotating the line in space. So, that's sort of the deal. Now, the one thing I want to leave you with, Ralph, is next year and the years to follow for a lot of people, the golf business is about to undergo, I think, a major change in the next few years. The club pro business is shrinking. And there's a lot of golf teachers out there right now. And there's going to be more people in the next 2, 3, 4 years that, they got into the business right after they got out of college, or maybe they didn't go to college, and they don't want to go, they don't want to go work at, Firestone as the, as the service manager. And there's going to be an influx of people. Just kidding. There's going to be an influx of people teaching golf in the next couple of years that have letters next to their names, and so I think there's going to be sort of a big shakeup in the golf business in the next few years, and I think maybe at first it won't be good, but in the long run I think the shakeup's going to be good, and the internet's getting better every day. We're doing the Skype conversation for this interview. And I have this beta version of Skype now that, you're going to have to pay a little bit, but you're going to be able to get 5 or 6 people on there. I mean, the information sharing is what I'm going at, is going to be at an exponential rate in the next few years, because these new people getting into the teaching business that have been in the club pro business, they're going to look for information. So, I'm sure all the little methodologies, they're all ready to sign the people up and teach them their stuff. And I'm going to be doing my best to educate them, and guys like yourself that have real good websites, you to do a good job. Y'all have a big role in this too. And to me, as long as the information is solid and it's not just hocus pocus, it's real science. It's not just pseudoscience. I'm all for whatever it is, as long as it helps the game that we all love. And the only thing that's going to help the game is it's got to help a lot more golfers in like a small little subset. So that's sort of my sign off on all this, is that, everybody has a responsibility to the game in the next couple of years to really whittle this stuff down and actually start fixing some people and stop talking about it. And anybody can fix a hacker. Let's see everybody let's see everybody pool their information, with their little groups and try to scientifically figure out their own methods. I think some of the methodologies are trying to do that, and at least people out there in the marketplace, and the guys like you that do a good job of promoting or at least exposing a few different ideas, on your really, really good, fair, and balanced website, that I think the marketplace is going to be able to find where the best information is for them, and we'll all have a couple dollars in our pocket and go play the next new good golf course that gets built with a couple new guys that just started playing golf that really like it, because they can bust 80 or 90 or whatever it is they want to do.
Okay, Brian. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you as usual. Very enlightening, and I think the readers, the watchers, or this thing's changing again. change is good. You know, it starts as a written, and we do an audio. Now it's a video. Who knows what's next? 3D, a 3D interview.
See, ready. I'm gonna start working out a little bit.
Okay, so Brian, we're gonna air this, and it was a pleasure once again. And okay, stay out of the line.